Meanwhile, the freight backlog at Ports of Auckland is turning into a serious safety issue, according to truckies, with hundreds of freight containers being driven to their destinations after ships have been forced to dock elsewhere. The National Transport Forum says a freighter carrying 1,300 containers is having to divert to Northport near Whangārei because of delays at Ports of Auckland, and all of those containers will have to be trucked back down to Auckland. Ports of Auckland has been under fire over major delays in clearing cargo, and earlier this week it suspended its automated carriers that unload containers after one robot went rogue and crashed. Forum spokesperson Nick Leggett explains why it's a logistical nightmare.
You're going to have 1,300 Auckland-bound containers in Whangārei on the 6th of December. Those will have to move by road, which means probably around 2,600 truck movements to and from Auckland to Whangārei, and there's going to be, that they're substandard roads. The rail is out to Whangārei until the 11th of January, so these all have to go on the roads, and this is peak season. This is substandard roads and more people travelling because, it's going to have to go through and into the holiday period.
So the safety issue is actually on the roads. They're having to transport the containers. And by containers, we're talking about those big...
20-foot containers, yeah, two of them on a truck usually. This is just one example of where a ship has had to go to Northport in Whangārei because it couldn't hang around waiting to get into the Ports of Auckland. But the bigger problem for New Zealand is if the next ship doesn't wait and goes back. There are imports on that ship, but it's also those ships take our exports away as well. This is critical for New Zealand. We are at the bottom of the world, obviously. At the bottom of the supply chain, we are easy to miss off, and it will create woes for us in terms of safety on roads. There'll be fewer trucks probably in and around Ports of Auckland for quite a while, but there'll be more on State Highway 1 between Whangārei and to Auckland and south into the Waikato as well.
Who is this on then? If you're saying that this is a serious safety concern, who takes responsibility for it? Is it the Ports of Auckland?
I don't think it is the Ports of Auckland. As I say, this is symptomatic of a major problem, and New Zealand does need to get a grip of it. So I think to blame one port or one shipping line is wrong. We are feeling the effects of a congested really a worldwide supply chain that, as a result of COVID, is under real pressure. What we've got to do, though, as a country, we've written to the Ministry of Transport in the last couple of days to say this, is that we've got to actually get a grip. We've got to understand where the pressures are and try and anticipate them, and that means involving different industries, freight forwarders, ports, road transport, rail, and getting them together around the table to try and understand where the pinch points are going to be. We have to get a grip. Most of us take for absolute granted the fact that goods get to us. We order something online or we go to the supermarket. That is under pressure, and we do need to underline that, Lisa, because it doesn't seem that that's got through to the right people in government, and we do need to see this taken more seriously.
But when you talk about getting together and talking about it, people listening will think that's a lot of white noise and flapping jaws. If there is one single thing that you could do to make this better, what would it actually be?
Well, the thing to remember is this is a chain. So while it might sound like motherhood and apple pie to want to get people together, chains only work when each link is functioning. What I would say is we need to recognise it's peak season. We need to get rail working in pinch points, particularly in getting empty containers back to where they need to be loaded to go out for export. Getting the link between, it's not just Auckland and it's not just the Golden Triangle. This is nationwide. It's getting the freight available for the inter-island ferries and for rail generally. We've seen pinch points at other ports. It's about getting that capacity and getting those empty containers off ports to their destination so they can be unloaded and then get freight back into them and get them to their next destination, because there are problems all around the country. People are screaming out for empty containers. If we don't have that, our economy effectively can grind to a halt. So I would say it's about container supply is one thing, but getting people talking is really important because we've got to anticipate where the problems are going to be at peak season.
Okay, so this ship's being diverted up north because the Auckland port can't fit it in. And then you're going to load all this stuff onto trucks and send it back down to Auckland. There's got to be a cost involved in that. Do you know how much it is and who ends up paying for it?
Huge cost, and ultimately it will be the importers that pay, because the shipping line have said that this is a force majeure. They couldn't do anything about it, therefore the cost falls on the people who own the freight. So just to give you an idea, it costs about $120 to move a container from the Ports of Auckland around Auckland, to a destination around Auckland. I suspect, well, I don't suspect, I know that cost to move a container from Northport to Auckland or south could be as much as 10 times that. And that, at a time when the owners of that freight can probably least afford that cost, they're going to have that heaped on them, and ultimately that'll fall onto consumers. So, it's not just a case of us not being able to get our goods, it's a case of actually they could be more expensive.
And that is Nick Leggett from the National Transport Forum.